speak here, I went ahead and wrote 2 speeches, so if you'll bear with me. Before I get started though, when I was doing my research, I heard what now has to be my favorite dad joke. And since it's about one of the famous members of the Alamo, I thought I'd share it with you today. And it goes, do you know how Davy Crockett likes his pie? Alamo'd. Okay, thank you. As a kid, paying attention in school was not one of my strong suits. It took quite a bit of the teacher's effort to keep me paying attention. One of the few exceptions, though, was Texas history. It always kept me captivated, and like most, my favorite was learning about the Alamo. There are so many heroes to admire and learn about, so it is a great story to hold the attention of almost anybody. As a kid, I was told about all the important things the Alamo inspired, but those dots did not connect until I was much older. As a youngster, I was so intrigued with the battle itself, I did not have the desire to contemplate what came next. I knew the Alamo ultimately inspired a nation, but I wanted to know more about the explosions and bravery that took place during the battle. When I first set foot on these hallowed grounds of the Alamo, that all changed for me. I still remember turning the corner to get a full view of the Alamo for the first time and the onslaught of emotions that filled my body. I could almost hear the cannon fire and the men hollering to take cover and return fire. The desperation, the heroism, the valor, the strength, the fortitude seemed to all still be hanging in the air. And with each breath, I felt I was becoming more and more Texan. It was a heavy moment for me indeed. So many of the men I got to know and admire from the history books sacrificed their lives on this very spot for us all. So many heroes thought their last thoughts and breathed their last breath right here. I felt and still feel when I'm here an overwhelming responsibility to be the best Texan I can be, to honor and to try to live up to their astonishing sacrifice. It's hard not to feel the magnitude of the Battle of the Alamo when I look around to see the freedom it has afforded us and all it has helped inspire us to accomplish. Even as I stand here today, it seems almost surreal to have the distinct honor and privilege to speak about the Alamo on the grounds of the Alamo. I cannot implore my fellow Texans enough to complete the pilgrimage to visit these sacred grounds and feel the full force of the Texas spirit. All Texans need to visit at least once to see and feel from whence they came. When I first started chasing rabbits for this speech and thinking of different angles of approach, I came across the translation of the word Alamo, which is poplar, or more commonly known in these parts as cottonwood. It did not really strike me as much at first, but it grew on me because of its simplicity. A group of Spanish troops being stationed here in the early 1800s saw that it was in a grove of cottonwoods and called it El Alamo, or the Cottonwood. To be fair, Alamo was part of the name of the hometown of many of the Spanish troops stationed there, but the simplistic name grew on me. Not to mention, that simplistic name is such a guy thing to do. Naming something is not a task you should usually trust to men because it will end up inevitably being something simple like the Cottonwood or Junior. That said, as simple as that name was at the time it was given, my, oh my, has it grown into something way more powerful and unique. The word Alamo now hits most Texans with the power of Mjolnir, and it demonstrates of how powerful words and symbols can become, no matter how simple they are when established. Long before the Alamo was the Alamo, it was a Spanish missionary established to help spread the word of God in Spanish culture. The San Antonio de Valero mission was founded in 1718, but some time passed before the structure as we know it was built. It has been here for many years, to say the least. I am sure the original idea was to protect themselves from the inclemencies of the weather and the threats of the natives. But being that every single one of these stones have been gathered and stacked by human hands, I often wonder if one of the many people involved in the construction ever thought further into the future for the use of this building. I mean, the nature of a mission was to establish and move on, so they had to know it was not likely to be a mission site forever. Not to mention the vast amounts of time the thankless job like gathering and stacking stones afforded the workers. Did it ever cross a worker's mind that the structure they were working on could have such an effect on future generations? I know it would have been a broad generalization on their part, but could it be possible one of them imagined this structure would stand for centuries and inspire generation after generation? Could they feel even a small part of the energy that would emanate from this site long after they were gone? I'm sure they felt they were doing God's work, but I often wonder if they had any inclination of how big and important a job they were doing. I don't know much at all about the people who built this structure, but I am forever grateful for their effort in helping build us this magnificent edifice that would grow into an inspirational symbol for Texas. Originally, I had what I thought was a great idea of comparing the Battle of the Alamo to the Battle of Thermopylae. I have seen the movie 300, so I'm now an expert on that battle, just like I became a karate expert after watching Karate Kid. Seeing this was already done on numerous occasions and realizing how little I actually knew of the famous Spartan battle, I decided not to go that route, but one thought just kept screaming at me to include it. It was inspired by the movie 300, so I'm sure the story was embellished, if it is true at all, but I feel compelled to share. The kicker is, pardon my pun, but it compares Leonidas' Sparta kick to William Travis's single cannon shot. For those not familiar with the movie 300, a Persian messenger comes to Sparta and insults King Leonidas by asking him to kneel and pay homage to Xerxes, the Persian king, or the mighty Persian army would descend upon them. King Leonidas, not taking the threat lightly, kicked the messenger into the deep well to his death while yelling at him, "This is Sparta." King Leonidas, or any Spartan for that matter, would not tolerate any outsider threatening to take their freedoms. Fast forward a little over 2,000 years to the Battle of the Alamo. We are aware Santa Anna asked for unconditional surrender, or he would descend upon them, and that he intended to take no prisoners, just as the messenger from Persia made clear to King Leonidas. We are also aware that William Travis defiantly responded to Santa Anna's threat with a single cannon shot. And in my mind's eye, I can see him yelling from the top of the Alamo to Santa Anna and his men, "This is Texas," as he fired the cannon shot that is still echoing through time. Before I wrap this up, I want to share a reoccurring thought about this event that led to a revelation for me. The genesis of this revelation came from wondering why Masons revere this event so deeply. Of the many brave men that died during the battle, only 5 are known to be Masons. There were probably other Masons at the battle, but their names are unknown to us. There have been many other battles that Masons have died in, yet few are as celebrated as the Masons who fought at the Alamo. Not to belittle any of these men's actions or sacrifice in any way, but the Battle of the Alamo is not exclusively a Masonic event, yet we celebrate it as it is one. I know we would not have it any other way, but how did we get so lucky as Masons to be so closely related to this event? I propose that along with the Masons that perished in this fight, it is the ideals of the Alamo represents and how closely they align with our craft's teaching that make the Battle of the Alamo so uniquely Masonic and dear to every Mason's heart. The basis of our craft is the knowledge and ability to properly exercise our free will. But what good is free will if you do not have the freedom to exercise it? I can think of few events that were bigger expressions of free will than the Battle of the Alamo. So many of our lessons and virtues are interwoven into the battle, from temperance to fortitude, from brotherly love to strength, wisdom, faith, hope, and definitely charity. Their goodwill has certainly extended beyond the grave. Given the time, we could probably associate most all Masonic values in some way to the men who fought and died at the Alamo. Freemasons have fallen under the scrutinous eye of many organizations and governments, and we are reminded again and again throughout our rituals how important and tough it is to maintain freedom. Again, I do not want to take one bit from our brothers who died at the Alamo, but I wanted to share my personal realization of how deep the connection the Alamo has to Masons. We as Masons understand how slippery freedom can become, and that it is not a foregone conclusion of the future or wrapped up with a bow by fate, but takes people steeped with virtue to have the courage to step across that line and lay down their lives for something bigger than themselves. I cannot express what an honor it is to have had the privilege to speak here today. It will be a memory that I will cherish into my death. I want to thank everyone who had a hand in planning this event, especially you San Antone brothers who worked year after year to ensure our fraternity has a place at the table to celebrate this monumentous occasion. I want to close with a portion of the words Brother Juan Seguin spoke when they moved the remains of the valiant men of the Alamo for more decent interment. He said, "The spirit of liberty appears to be looking down from its elevated throne, saying, 'Behold your brothers Crockett, Bowie, Travis. They preferred to die 1,000 times rather than submit themselves to the tyrant's yoke. Their sacrifice are worthy of inclusion in the pages of history. What a brilliant example for others to follow.' Thank you, and God bless Texas." All right, Worshipful Corey Harris, if you will close this out, I believe.
Right, Worshipful Moore, that was a very moving presentation. Both of them were extremely moving, and I'm very thankful for your words today. Brethren, ladies, and guests, if you would all please join with me in offering some reverence before we part this occasion. Supreme Grand Overseer, we once again humbly come before you with prideful and thankful hearts, very proud of the examples that have been exhibited this morning by the men who, in the face of certain danger, exhibited valiance. They were light in a situation of total darkness. You were that light, and we are proud of it. We are thankful for their example, and we're thankful for the custodians of this fine building, those who continue to care for it, preserve it, so that we as Texans and all those who travel to Texas to participate in such a moving experience as remembering the Alamo. We ask that you continue to oversee each and every one of us. Bless us in our lives. We ask that your all-powerful hand guide our actions towards that ever point of truth, justice, and love. We ask that you be with those who are not with us. Guide them, protect their lives. We are one body under your guidance. We ask all these things in your most precious, most benevolent name. Amen.